He was one of the most brutal emperors in history, unstoppable, feared by everyone who stood against him. In a single war, he killed over 1 lakh people. No enemy could defeat him, but there was one man who finally stopped him, Ashoka himself. How does a man go from a merciless conqueror to someone the world remembers for peace even today? What happened on that battlefield that changed him forever? Ashoka was not born great. He was not the favorite son, not the obvious heir. He was just another prince in the Mauryan dynasty, surrounded by power, but not guaranteed any of it. And in a palace full of princes, only one thing decides your future, not kindness, not morality, but the strength. From a young age, Ashoka understood this clearly. If you hesitate, you lose. If you show weakness, you are ignored. So he did what most wouldn't. He hardened himself, not naturally but intentionally. He trained his mind to become sharp, his decisions to become fast, his actions to become ruthless. Because in his world, mercy was not respected. Power was. When rebellions broke out, he was sent to deal with them. Not to negotiate, not to calm the situation, but to end it. And he did, quickly, decisively, without hesitation. Every mission he completed, every rebellion he crushed, added something to his name. The fear. People didn't admire Ashoka, they feared him, and fear is a powerful tool. Because fear travels faster than respect. Over time, Ashoka built something more valuable than support. He built a reputation that said, if Ashoka is coming, there will be no mercy, and that reputation made him rise. The throne did not come to him easily. It was taken, through strategy, through strength, through decisions others were too afraid to make. And when he finally became emperor, he didn't slow down. He expanded because once a man tastes power, he doesn't want to hold it. He wants more of it. Kingdom after kingdom, region after region, fell under the Mauryan Empire. Ashoka was not just ruling, he was dominating. And with every victory, one belief grew stronger inside him. There is nothing I cannot conquer. But there was one land that refused to bow. Kalinga, strong, independent, uncontrolled. It stood there not as the biggest kingdom, but as the one that said, no. And for a man like Ashoka, that was unacceptable. Because power does not tolerate resistance. So he made a decision. Kalinga will fall, not someday, not slowly, but now. The war began, and it was unlike anything before. Kalinga did not surrender. They fought, with everything they had, every soldier, every resource, every ounce of strength. And that made Ashoka more aggressive, because resistance only made him more determined to crush it. The battlefield turned brutal. Not strategy anymore. Not controlled warfare. Pure destruction. Swords clashing. Men screaming. Blood covering the ground. Days passed. The fight continued. Until slowly, Kalinga began to break. Not because they lacked courage, but because Ashoka had more force, more numbers, more relentless pressure. And then it ended. Kalinga fell. Ashoka won. Over 1 lakh people were dead. Thousands more captured. The land destroyed. This was supposed to be victory, the kind of victory that defines a king, the kind of victory that becomes legend. But something strange happened. Ashoka didn't celebrate. He didn't announce triumph. He didn't even leave the battlefield. He walked, slowly, through what he had just created, step by step. And with every step, something inside him began to shift. Because from a distance, war looks glorious. But up close, it reveals the truth. A soldier lying still, his hand gripping the ground as if trying to hold on to life. A young boy who should have never been there, now part of the same silence. Families broken, voices gone. This was not an enemy. This was humanity. And for the first time in his life, Ashoka was not looking at victory. He was looking at consequences. Everything he had done until now suddenly had weight. Real weight. Not numbers, not territory, but lives. And in that moment, a question entered his mind. A simple question, but a dangerous one. What have I done? This is the moment everything changes. Because until this point, Ashoka had never questioned himself. He questioned enemies. He questioned strategies. but never himself, and once that question enters, you cannot escape it. He stood there, a man who had defeated armies, now facing something he could not defeat. His own mind. There was no enemy to fight, no sword to swing, no strategy to apply, only silence. And that silence was louder than any battlefield. That night there was no victory, no celebration, no pride, only thoughts, images that would not leave, voices that would not stop. And slowly, the man who once moved without hesitation began to feel something new. Not fear, not weakness, awareness, and only awareness. It's dangerous, because it forces you to see what you were avoiding. Days passed, but Kalinga did not leave him. The battlefield stayed in his mind. The faces stayed. The weight stayed, and with it his certainty began to break. Why conquer, if this is the result? Why win if it leaves this behind? Why expand power if it destroys everything in its path? These were not questions of a weak man. These were questions of a man who finally saw clearly, and clarity changes everything. Ashoka had a choice. He could ignore it, bury it under more wars, more victories, more noise, and most people would, but he didn't. He chose to face it, and that decision is what makes his story different. He turned away from war, not because he lost strength, but because he understood it. He turned toward a different path, a path not of domination, but of discipline, not of destruction, but of responsibility. He embraced the principles of Dharma, not as a symbol, but as a way of living, a way of ruling. The same man who once spread fear across kingdoms now started spreading something else. Order, compassion, self-control, not weakness, but control. He embraced Buddhism, spread the ideas of nonviolence to the world, because he realized something most people never do. Conquering others is easy. Conquering yourself is the real challenge. And from that moment, his focus changed. Not outward, but inward. Every decision, every action was no longer about expansion. It was about alignment, about becoming a man who understood power and didn't abuse it. This is why Ashoka is remembered, not because he conquered, but because he changed. Because transformation is harder than victory. Anyone can rise with aggression. Very few can rise above it. Now look at your own life. You may not be standing on a battlefield, but you are fighting something, your fears, your doubts, your ego, the need to prove yourself, the need to win no matter what. And just like Ashoka, you are chasing something. Success, respect, recognition. But ask yourself at what cost? Because if you gain everything, but lose control over yourself, have you really won? Ashoka had everything: power, empire, victory, and still, he had to rebuild himself, because real strength is not in domination, it is in control. Control over your actions, control over your emotions, control over your mind. That is the battle most people avoid, but that is the only battle that matters. Because once you win that, nothing outside can defeat you. Ashoka's greatest victory was not Kalinga. It was not the empire. It was not power. It was the moment he faced himself and chose to change. So now the question is not, do you want to win? The real question is, what kind of victory are you chasing? Because some victories look powerful from the outside, but destroy you from within, and some victories require you to let go of everything to finally gain control. Ashoka learned that. After destroying an entire land, you don't have to learn it that way, but you still have to learn it. Because sooner or later, everyone faces that moment where everything goes silent, and you are left alone with yourself. And in that moment, there is no enemy, no distraction, no escape, only one question. What have you become? And what are you going to do about it? If this changed the way you think, consider subscribing for more wisdom.